this today to celebrate our trans community, our trans youth, and to help fundraise for our shapewear program. So we are seeking to help provide different items of shapewear, such as binders, gaffs, anything to help our trans youth feel more at home in their bodies. We're going to be raising some money for that program tonight. Our goal for this, sorry about that. So our goal for the stream tonight is $500. So please help us reach that goal. One of our volunteers will be posting the donation link in our chat. And so thank you guys for that. But anyway, so going on to the stream. Oh, I might need to. So tonight we are going to give everyone a crash course in transgender and non-binary 101, talk about how gender and sexuality intersect, and discuss some of the challenges that the transgender community faces in Texas. The Transgender Day of Visibility is also about celebrating the beauty and the wins of the transgender community. We will be celebrating gender euphoria with other trans folk and through art, through different artistic measures created by trans youth of the LGBTQ saves community. Now it's time to meet the team of transgender volunteers who have put together tonight's events. So to start off, my name is Bertie Gardner, and I'm the community coordinator for LGBTQ Saves. I'm a 27-year-old transmasculine person who uses he, him, and they, them pronouns. I'd love to introduce y'all to my friend, Jay. Oh, are we still experiencing no audio?
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm 35. I am a gender fluid person. I use they, them, and murmurs pronouns. I'm a program leader with LGBTQ Saves.
And Shalia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shalia. I am 32, I think, and I'm also transmasculine, and I use he, him, they, them pronouns, and I'm a program leader with LGBTQ Saves. And next up, we have Issa.
Hey y'all, my name is Isame or Issa, and I'm a volunteer and former member with LGBTQ Saves. I'm a 20-year-old genderqueer, transmasculine queer person, and I use they, them, and they, fair pronouns.
Awesome. Again, I'd love to give a shout out to these wonderful people on screen with me. They do wonderful work with the youth that we serve with LGBTQ Saves. So I'm excited to have all of our creativity together for tonight. Now, first, we're going to go through our crash course in Trans 101 and Non-Binary 101, and I will leave that to Issa. So Issa, you have the floor.
All right. So to get started, we'll look at this wonderful gender unicorn and talk a little bit about the terms that are on this diagram. So first, gender identity. Gender identity is a self-identified role that either conforms or does not conform with the role that you were assigned at birth. For example, cisgender woman, transgender man, genderqueer person, etc. And then next on this list is gender expression. And that's the way that someone outwardly expresses their internal gender identity. And this is the clothes that you wear, your hairstyle, the makeup you use or don't use. There's any number of ways to express yourself. And then following, there's assigned sex at birth, which is just a label that's given to you by a doctor and can be female, male, or intersex. And following, there's physically attracted to and emotionally attracted to here on this cool little image. And you'll see that this is the same as sexual and romantic orientation. So sexual orientation describes who you identify as being sexually attracted to, while romantic orientation describes who you identify as being romantically attracted to. And some examples are gay, straight, homoromantic, heteroromantic, and an infinite number of other terms and labels. So this altogether doesn't include gender, but gender is a cultural role, which is characterized by certain clothes, behaviors, physical characteristics, and societal pressures. So a female gender role could be one that's associated with female identification and feminine clothes, and maybe you're expected to be less aggressive. And so really, for the purpose of our presentation, it's important to note that gender and sex are not the same thing. They're two different things. And that brings me up to the next slide, which is what transgender is. So the word trans comes from Latin, and it means across or over or beyond. And so when you combine that with gender, transgender is identifying with a gender that is different than the one assigned to you at birth. So it's going beyond the gender line or across the gender line. And transgender is also an adjective. So it's a describing word. You would say a transgender person. Being trans is a natural, a common, and a valuable perspective and experience. I love being trans, and I'm perfectly naturally trans. Transgender is also a role that has been defined for thousands of years across the globe. And also, to understand what something is, sometimes you have to understand what it's not too. So on this next slide, you'll see that transgender as a word is not a noun. So you wouldn't say transgendered person because ED makes it a describing word. Transgender is already a describing word, so you say transgender person. You wouldn't say transgenderids or transgenders because it's not a noun. It's not its own standalone word. And then being transgender is also not undesirable or faulty. Being trans is great and awesome, and I love to be trans. And I don't feel like there's any fault in my experience. We're not less scientifically valid, and being trans is also not a choice or a trend. Being trans and transgender experience has existed since time immemorial, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So next, there's the word cis and cisgender. And that word comes from Latin too, and it means on this same side of, or same side as. So in chemistry, you'll hear about cis fats and trans fats, and it all has to do with the Latin root. So to be cisgender is to identify with the same gender that you were assigned at birth. You're on that same side. You haven't moved. You're still there. It's also an adjective and a describing word like transgender. And being cisgender is a common experience that is societally seen as default, unfortunately, I would say. And cisgender also is a role that has existed for thousands of years too, and is just as natural and valid of an experience as being transgender. And so the next slide here shows what cisgender is not. And so cisgender as a word is not a noun. So you wouldn't say a cisgendered person or cisgenderids or cisgenders as a group. Cisgender is not more scientifically valid. It's not a bad word that replaces normal. It's not a slur. Cisgender is not more natural or even older than transgender identities. And being cisgender is not the only desirable, correct, or default experience. It's not the default. Someone who is trans wasn't cis and then became trans. The doctor just happened to be wrong. So being cis is not the default. It's not even necessarily the starting point. And that brings me now to what is non-binary. And so non-binary falls under the umbrella of transgender. It is outside of the male-female binary. It's not binary. It's not these two options. So a non-binary gender identity falls under the transgender identity umbrella. Since transgender means to identify with a gender different than the sex assigned to you at birth, you can identify either within or outside of the Western male-female gender binary. And more on that with a cute graphic in a little bit. So being non-binary is just as valid and just as important as binary identities. We are biodiversity in action. We are not a new trend. The Western gender binary is actually a recent invention compared to us. If non-binary identity is a trend, then it's been trending for thousands of years, y'all, since time immemorial. There are examples of non-binary gender roles in cultures across the globe, including in local indigenous communities here in North America, where the common term for the upwards of 500 tribes is two-spirit. So next, there's a nice visual depicting where non-binary identities fall. So you've got the transgender umbrella, and then there's binary and non-binary. So binary folks identify as a man or a woman. Non-binary folks, like myself, can identify as an infinite number of things. So I'm genderqueer, I'm gender fawn, I'm any number of the labels that feel right for me. And then moving on, there's also this wonderful graphic, which is a great example of the gender biodiversity we see here on Earth. I highly recommend getting familiar with some of these ancient and ancestral roles to learn more about our trans ancestors and our history. And finally, on this last slide, I will leave y'all with some of my favorite quotes and metaphors from two non-binary creatives. The first is from my favorite comic ever, Genderqueer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe. Maya says, as I pondered a pronoun change, I began to think of gender less as a scale and more as a landscape. Some people are born in the mountains, while others are born by the sea. Some people are happy to live in the place they were born, while others must make a journey to reach the climate in which they can flourish and grow. That just gives me goosebumps. Oh, I love that comic. And last, this quote comes from Texas-raised Alak Vaid Manan, a gender non-conforming author of books like Beyond the Gender Binary, a performer, and a public speaker. They say, there are infinite non-binary genders. We are not merely some third option for leftovers. So now I'll turn it over to Shalia, who will go more in depth about transgender experience, describing euphoria and dysphoria. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Issa, for that wonderful overview. So we're going to get a little bit into gender dysphoria and gender euphoria. So gender dysphoria is a phrase that means profound discomfort, dissatisfaction, and sometimes debilitating emotional experiences regarding your gender and your biological sex. So there's a conflict between the internal and your external self. And while it's a common experience in the transgender community, not everyone experiences it. So there are two relevant categories of dysphoria that are relevant to our discussion this evening. One of those is physical dysphoria. That means that a transgender person feels like their biological sex does not match their gender and how they feel. So with that being said, there's also social dysphoria. This occurs when people use, or not people use, this occurs when transgender people are in social settings, and let's say, someone uses incorrect pronouns, or someone puts them, someone categorizes them outside of their gender. That would be social dysphoria. So for my cis people, I want you to imagine feeling the way you do right now as cisgender. Your feelings line up with your body. And I want you to imagine that you have these feelings, but your body doesn't match those feelings. And that's what many transgender people go through. I won't say all transgender people, but a lot of us do. So gender euphoria is the opposite of everything I just mentioned. So gender euphoria is when your gender, your body, and your reality, they're all congruent, and they serve to kind of consistently validate each other. Outside of that, there's not much else to say. It's just when everything lines up, your feelings, your reality, and your gender, they all validate each other. So speaking of validation, Jay is up next with a discussion on old terms and new terms as far as referring to the transgender community.
Thank you so much, Shalia. So I just wanted to go a little bit over some of the terms that have been previously used and the terms that we're more looking towards using now. Some of the outdated terms that you've probably heard would be things like transsexual, tranny, she, he, she, saying biologically or genetically male or female, or transgenderism. These are all terms that, while it may be at a time they were something that we would have used and would have been accepted, they've kind of become outdated. Language changes and evolves as society changes and evolves, so we want to make sure that we're following those changes. Some appropriate terms that you might want to look at are transgender. Look at how people describe themselves, use the pronouns that they refer to themselves, and the gender that they tell you you are. We do want to make sure on that note that we are not outing a trans person without their express consent. So if someone introduces themselves to you and lets you know that, hey, I'm a transmasculine person, you would want to say, okay, if I was to introduce you to someone else, how would you like me to do so? So these are just ways that we can be a great ally and kind of help out those of us in the trans community. So next up, we have Isa, who is going to go over some pronouns with us.
Thank you so much, Jay. So this is Pronoun Use 101. For those of you who like to take notes, feel free to jot this down. So first, pronouns are non-negotiable and they show respect. Alak Manon also has said, trans people do not have preferred pronouns, as if our genders are some sort of opinion up for debate. We have pronouns. Some people don't. That's a fact. So misgendering us isn't about being insensitive, it's about being incorrect. Pronouns can induce dysphoria or euphoria also, like was talked about earlier, so be mindful about how you're impacting someone with your language. Also, always ask or use context clues before you refer to someone with certain pronouns. You can't know someone's pronouns just by looking at them, and sometimes people use different pronouns in different contexts. As a note, be respectful that someone might not want to tell you their pronouns, or they might use pronouns that don't align with your assumption of them. Don't ask for someone's pronouns if you've heard that person themselves use a specific set, like questioning a trans person about that pronoun, or about the pronouns that they use, even though they clearly use a certain set. And some people don't use pronouns at all, while others use multiple sets, or they change pronouns based on how they feel. Also, pronouns are not the same as sex, gender, gender identity, or gender expression. Even though some pronouns are associated with certain roles and gender expressions, anyone can use any set of pronouns, and that does not invalidate their gender identity. So play around with it, have fun. Neopronouns or new pronouns are modern pronouns that fill in the singular neutral pronoun gap in English beyond singular they, such as my pronouns of faith, fair. And also practice and progress over perfection. Even if pronouns are hard to learn and you make mistakes, know that you are learning and that it's okay to mess up sometimes. However, don't tell someone that their pronouns are hard for you. It's just not nice. You can do this, and there are lots of fun ways to practice. For example, I love to use neopronouns on my cat, Moss. And you can also switch pronouns or use neopronouns with stuffed animals and other family pets. And sooner or later, you'll get the hang of it. It does get easier. And I'll let that go now. Thanks.
Hey, I'm back. We're going to talk a little bit about transitioning. So there's no wrong way to transition. Every way is beautiful and valid. Some of the ways people transition, they may do so only socially. So they will just, for instance, change their name, change their pronouns, change the way they dress. I personally did change my pronouns. I'd gone through the process of legally changing my name, and I have grown a love for some of these lovely, fun button-down shirts. They're some of my favorite thing to wear, and they make me feel incredibly euphoric. Some people transition medically, so they might get top or bottom surgery. This would be a time when we would make sure that we are not asking people about what how they're transitioning. This is something that, you know, is personal to every transition person or every trans person. And some people don't transition in any specific way other than to say, this is my gender. All of these ways are beautiful and valid. So we are now going to kick it to Shalia for an ally tip.
Ally tip number 1. Always listen and learn from the community. It's okay to not know everything as long as you try your best to improve your knowledge. So no one knows everything about anything, which gives us all a great opportunity for communication and education. Being an ally is as simple as listening intuitively and respecting and honoring people's reality, even if it's different from your own. To be heard, validated, and accepted are things we all want. Listening and learning from the community will take you a long way. Speaking of the community, next we have a video from one of my favorite people in the world, Mianna.
Good evening to all of my trans girls in the name of love. My name is Mianna, and I am a trans woman of color. I am sitting here doing this video for the purpose of Trans Day of Visibility. As you can see, it's not glossy. I'm not well dressed. I don't have on any makeup. I just got off work, actually. The reason I'm doing this video in such a real way and not sort of a glossy campaign way is because visibility is about seeing trans women as real people living real lives. Because I just got off work, this is how I look. I'm hungry. I'm eating. I'm living a real life. I dedicate this video to the girls, and I'm inspired by none other than Janet Mock. Because seeing her a decade ago in a magazine, just sitting on a porch, just being visible and real, ignited a hunger in me for my identity to be first and foremost in my life. And that's what I would like to inspire you girls to do. I want you to see, I want us to see one another as real people. And those of you who are out there in the struggle trying to make it, know that I am going to be 45 years old this year. 10 years beyond the average age that trans women lose their lives due to violence. So I have to say that I am blessed and I intend to be here. So to all my trans women in the struggle, keep hope alive because, dear God, we are here. Love you.
A noticeable chest can cause a lot of dysphoria. And so a lot of what we try to do is just flatten it to hell if we can. And sometimes that's really great, but it doesn't do well for our bodies. So we want to make sure that when we are going to get a binder, that it's a proper fitting binder. So a lot of the times the websites like GC2B will have a guide to help you measure yourself. That way you're getting a proper fitting binder. So when you're getting ready to order one, you know, just make sure you're getting you have like measuring tape, a ruler, make sure you're not wearing anything. So, you know, no top, kind of do it yourself privately. Measure around your chest, directly under your arms. And then, second measuring is around the largest part of your chest. It should be going directly over your nipples. And then finally, you're going to do a third measurement underneath your breasts. Ways to safely bind. So there are compression shirts. This is what we call binders, or compression shirts or binders, a sports bra. Compression shirts are sold at sporting goods stores and are usually cheaper than specialty chest binders. So this is kind of what like bikers wear when they're going on the long bike rides. You could also use a sports bra. So here you can get one size smaller, or you can do some layering with multiple sports bras. It should be all right, but not it should be tight, but not uncomfortable. If there's any discomfort or pain, use a different method. And at any time when you're binding, if you start feeling sore, if you start feeling short of breath, take some time to yourself and take off the binding method. You could also use control top stocking pantyhose. Cut off the legs and cut a hole in the crotch to make it easy to pull over your head. And then some of these methods can be combined with larger shirts. Obviously, with all trans bodies, not one way is going to work for everyone. I know some of my larger chested trans men have issues binding. So you can use like the sports bra method or the control top stockings, and then layer a large t-shirt over it to help make you feel a little bit more comfortable, feel a little bit more confident. One of these things I want you to take away: do not use ACE bandages. All right, those things are not made for compression. You're going to wrap it around tightly on your chest, and you're not going to be able to breathe. So please don't do that. If you're not really comfortable with any of that, or if you just feel it's not going right, I have had some guys suggest using trans tape. You can buy a box of it on Amazon and watch a few videos on how to apply it, but it works great if some other methods don't work. Now, some tips from us, the LGBTQ Saves team, that we want you to remember: take breaks. It's recommended to not bind for more than 8 hours at a time. If you bind daily, try to at least have one day where you don't bind at all. So like when I'm going into the office, I wear my binder because that's how I feel most comfortable interacting in that space. However, when I come home, it's off. If it's the weekends and I'm not doing anything, it's off. So I'm taking a lot of breaks in between my binding. Not binding properly can cause issues with your ribs, including breakage. So if you have any pain while binding, remove the binder, all right? So we want you to be healthy while you're binding. If you experience chafing, try wearing a thin shirt between the binder and yourself, or use talcum powder. Look out for things like rashes. Make sure that you're washing your binder pretty regularly. I am a very sweaty guy. So I have to wash mine at least 2 or 3 times a week, just so I'm not smelling, but also so it's not causing any sort of rashes on my binder, on my body. Blah. Words are difficult. All right. But so those were some proper binding tips with Birdie. And we're gonna go on to our next video, which features Sam. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samuel, and I'm trans. I came out as trans to a very small group of my friends almost a decade ago and outed myself to everyone else about 6 years ago. And it's definitely the healthiest thing that I could have done for myself. Living my life authentically has removed a lot of stress, and I'm a lot more confident now that my body and my life feels like it's my own. I started testosterone in 2018 and had top surgery in January of 2020, and since then I just kind of feel unstoppable. I can wear clothes that make me feel good about myself and my body, and I can get into a stage costume and feel fabulous rather than feel like I need to strategically hide parts of myself. Currently I work retail, but I do also do drag, burlesque, and Rocky Horror Picture Show shadow casting, as well as making costumes and props for my friends, both for drag stuff and for Rocky Horror stuff. While doing Rocky, I also met my amazing wife, who is trans too, and we've become a really amazing support system for each other and encourage each other to do what makes us feel our best every day. I'm so much more confident in both myself physically and in my abilities now, and I just feel like my work and my hobbies have excelled because of it. I'm thrilled to have had such an amazing group of castmates to call my friends, a lovely wife, amazingly supportive in-laws, and incredibly protective coworkers. I'm happy, I'm safe, and I'm proud to be trans. And I feel very privileged that I've had the opportunity to physically transition in the ways that I've wanted to and have people in my life that care about me enough to make me feel safe.
Identity are as varied and as individual as each person. While there are some labels that seem to fit some people perfectly, others can provide a general idea of how someone's gender and sexuality is, while still others prefer no labels. There's no wrong way to identify, no wrong pairing between sexuality and gender. So they intersect in whatever way feels most comfortable for each individual person. Some people like to identify as bisexual, which is being attracted to 2 or more genders. There are some fun labels like sapphic, which means you are attracted to feminine presenting people. And those can apply to any one person, no matter what their gender identity is. So we are now going to go to Isa for another ally tip.
Hey, y'all. So our next ally tip is how important it is to recognize pronouns and to be cognizant of pronouns. So I use they, them, and they, fair pronouns. That means that both of those pronouns feel good and right for me. But I feel more gender euphoria when someone uses they, fair pronouns for me. These pronouns feel affirming to me. And again, for my own practice, I love to use they, fair pronouns to talk about my cat Moss. So pronouns for me have been a way to move from being just non-binary into being genderqueer. So non-binary kind of describes what I'm not, because I'm not a man or a woman, but I feel like now I get to affirm my identity as who I am, even just beyond this culturally imposed gender binary, that I get to be genderqueer, I get to be a fairy, I get to use fair pronouns, and that's so wonderful for me. So I wanted to open the floor for any experiences of our fellow volunteers and program leaders, and yeah, how have pronouns been important to y'all in y'all's lives?
So I'll go next. I am fairly new to the transgender community. I've always known that I wasn't female or she, her. So there was a period of time where, like Isa mentioned, I wasn't something. So now I found my pronouns, my he, him, they, them pronouns, and they definitely affirm how I feel inside.
I love hearing stories of gender euphoria and finding, who you truly are. So for me, pronouns have been pretty important. To me, it just means that someone is listening and they're wanting to respect me. So for me, when I share my pronouns and I hear them come back to me, that is just hugely affirming that I have found like a good group of people to be with. Recently, actually, tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary at a new job. I work in higher ed in Fort Worth. And so this was my first job where I was coming in and saying, "Hi, I'm transgender. What's going to happen?" But my coworkers have been super amazing. My name is everywhere, front facing for the students, but also just being in a meeting or seeing like someone typing in Teams and saying like, "Hey, like this is Bertie was going to do this. Can someone cover that for him?" And I'm just like I know it's like for some people it might not be a big deal, but to see that even when I'm not in the room, I'm not hovering over them, just to see them still use it has been really affirming to me. And so if any of my coworkers are watching this, thank you. And I really do appreciate that y'all do that.
Like Shalia, I'm still fairly new to the trans community. It was only about 4 or 5 years ago that I realized that my gender is much more fluid than just the binary. And it wasn't until about maybe 6 months to a year ago that I started really using they, them pronouns. I always get really excited when I'm out in public and someone just automatically uses they, them for me without even, trying. I also use murmurs, which comes from mer person, because I am a mer person. And Birdie has been really great about using those pronouns for me. And I also had a friend recently when she was talking to me, she used mer instead of saying something like girl. And that just made me so excited. I was like, this is a whole new way we can use this. So it's just really nice when little things like that happen. It brings that little burst of serotonin that everybody needs in their day. So
Sorry. So talking about like the importance of pronouns and language, I'm really happy to introduce two of my best friends in the next video. They're Alice and Lynn. They're the #1 couple in my world. So I'm really glad to share their experience with y'all.
Hi.
Take two.
My name is Lynn. I am genderqueer and non-binary. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a therapist.
And I'm Alice. I go by they, them, or she, her. I am, I'm something. And I'm a machinist.
We live in Denton. We just bought our first house during a pandemic.
We are engaged, affianced.
Yeah, we're getting married this year, and we are about to celebrate 3 years of being in a relationship together.
Our anniversary is April Fool's Day.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be who we are or be able to love each other in the specific way that we do if we weren't trans.
Yep.
That's just the truth of it.
That's just the truth of it. Yeah, being trans, being queer, being, whatever you want to call it, has been just a really wonderful and enriching part of my life. I feel like I've been able to learn not just about myself, but about all kinds of other people throughout the world. I, feel like I'm better able to relate to people who I've never met and will meet because of that fact about myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think same. I think that we found each other in a really important moment in our life, and after we'd both been through some really gross stuff, but my relationship with you, you really helped me kind of explore what my gender identity really meant to me, and what I wanted it to be, and what felt comfortable for me, and being on having that experience for myself of exploring what it means to be queer helped me be a better partner to Alice, and helped me love her better as a trans person, and then also you've challenged me in some really great ways, of my own internalized transphobia, and you've really kind of opened up my mind to just being kind to people, and just not making it about, it doesn't have to always make sense to you, that's okay. It makes sense to them, and that's what's important.
Yep.
And I think being queer has made me a better person.
So hello, welcome back. So like I was saying, Alice and Lynn are two of my best friends. Kind of like how Lynn was saying how Alice helped them find their true self. A lot of that can be said for the relationship I've had with Alice. She was really supportive of me when I started messing around with my own gender and gender identity. And so I guess I'm just going to take this time to say thank you, Alice, for helping people figure out who they truly are. She's a very special woman in my heart. So our next tip is more about what to do when access to something is an issue. So a lot of people in the trans community, we face a lot of discrimination in a variety of ways. Either this is through, not being able to find affirming doctors, feeling like we don't belong in the workplace, and different things like that, which can lead to a lot of just stuff falling on our shoulders. And sometimes it's really hard to access what we need. So for an example I wanted to share is, let's see, about 2 years ago, I started on testosterone. And so for y'all who don't know, testosterone comes in this really handy little vial, and a lot of people take a shot of testosterone every week. That way they can fill their bodies with glorious amounts of boy juice, and you can look like me. Or better. You could probably look a whole lot better than me. But so there was a few times consistently where I was going to pick up my medication and they didn't have a hard time like filling it. My insurance took it, which is very lucky for me. I realize not all trans people have that access. But I would notice that as I was picking up my medication, there was quite a few times where I didn't get syringes, I didn't get needles. They would be out, and it's just like, how could you fill my testosterone, something that I'm going to be taking with syringes, but not give me a way to take my medication? And so this caused me to be a few days late while taking my medication, getting off track on my doses, just because I couldn't do just because I didn't have the tools needed to successfully do my medication. And if any of y'all are very familiar with how puberty is, it's a rush of hormones. So me coming off of testosterone goes into this very big, moody tailspin, which is not fun for everyone. I was a teenager once, and I'm a teenager again, and I'd rather avoid having those type of days as much as I can. So something I did to get around this access issue is I actually went online. It's really great that there are some online pharmacies that you can utilize to get your prescription, to get your supplies, and sometimes it can be very affordable. So I ended up going online to Amazon, which, quick plug, if you use Amazon Smiles, subscribe to LGBTQ Saves. That way, every purchase you make through Amazon can benefit your favorite LGBTQ organization. Anyway, but I went and bought almost 2 years worth of needles and syringes for under $30. And so now that's how I was able to cut off my access issue. So if life is just trying to get you down, you're not able to access XYZ because of money, because of people being jerks, something like that, find a workaround. That is something that we're hoping to do with our shapewear program as well. So a lot of the times getting like a new binder can cost upwards of $40 to $50, which not a lot of people have sitting around, especially when a lot of the times the trans community is underemployed, or when it's a trans youth and they don't necessarily have access to their own money. So what we are wanting to do is break down that barrier of getting trans affirming shapewear by raising money so that we can make the purchases for our youth, and that way they can be a little bit more comfortable in their bodies. But talking about, chasing the dream and being successful as a trans person, I'd love to introduce our next video of Justine.
Hi, my name is Justine Ratliff, and I teach 9th grade biology at a school here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I want you to know that whatever your dreams are for your life, the fact that you're transgender does not change any of that. This year, I came out as a transgender woman, to all of my students, the principals, the other staff, pretty much everyone in my school district. And you know what? Life goes on. Miss Ratliff does the same job that Mr. Ratliff used to do, and it's great, and I'm a lot happier. So I just want you to know that if you need help, please get help. There are lots of organizations out there who want to help you, who want, even if you're in a position now to where you can't transition or whatever, it's not always going to be that way. So I just want to encourage you to, continue to just be yourself and stay safe. Bye.
All right. So I really love that video with Justine. I think especially being a younger trans person, especially being a younger trans person, it can be hard to navigate life and not have a role model. So I'm really appreciative of Justine kind of standing up and saying, hey, I can be a teacher and I'm trans. So the next kind of thing that I would like for us to kind of bring in with all of my lovely program leaders and volunteers is just kind of talking about ourselves and how we got to be where we are. I know that, we're all of different ages, different life experiences, and I'd love to hear more about how y'all are doing on your journey.
So I mentioned before that I'm new to the trans community. So what I discovered after I started volunteering with LGBTQ Saves is that I thought that being trans had to look a certain way.
Mic off.
So I
Mic
thought
feedback
that
off.
if I labeled myself as trans, then I had to like do the surgeries, like top and bottom surgery. So what I discovered from working with the organization is that trans can look however the person wants it to. So like I said, I always knew I wasn't a ma'am, a she, or a her, but I just recently found out what I actually am. So that's kind of where I am on my journey. So I'm actually just now coming out as trans and I'm loving it.
I love always talking to you, Shalia, and just like hearing like all your little positivities and stuff. I don't know, like the other day we were talking and I'm just like, oh my God. Like this is I just love seeing people be happy. I said it before, but yeah, I just love seeing people be happy. And I'm glad that you shared with us that. Also just kind of saying like how we're a safe place. For a lot of people who are not involved with LGBTQ Saves, we actually serve a large amount of trans youth. And I think that that's amazing, that we have provided a space not only for our youth to explore who they are, but our volunteers as well. So, wow, I feel like I had something more to say. All sorts of words. But I guess like just kind of where I am, I just feel sometimes it's just kind of mind-blowing where I am sometimes. Like I said, I started testosterone in 2019, and from there it's just been a whole different world. Oh, bless you. But there's been a whole different world just because it's like I knew like I came out as trans when I was in college, and like I changed my hair, I started changing how I wore stuff, but like but like a lot of the times, like now that I'm on testosterone, I feel like I'm truly feeling myself. I can look into a mirror and I feel like a lot of the dysphoria that I had is like just slowly kind of fading away. There's a lot of times where I'm looking in the mirror and I'm just like, well, damn, you got it going on. And I don't think I would necessarily feel that way if I didn't have testosterone helping me out. I'm finally getting a little bit of a beard. I joke to my I joke to my partners I'm just going to be like a little lumberjack, and so I'm hoping if I say it enough and if I rub it enough, I'll be the lumberjack of my dreams in a few maybe short years. Isa or Jade, would you like to share?
Yeah, I would love to. This is so wonderful. I love getting to hear about the joy and journeys of other trans people. And I love being trans so much that it's my total focus for my degree right now. I love being queer, and I'm minoring in queer studies. And I first came out as trans when I was 13. And if I were to have a conversation with my 13-year-old self, there would be so many questions. There has been so much growth and change in my transition, and so much like life-giving energy that I've found in community, especially when I experienced a lot of backlash for my identity and lost my home and my family. I found chosen family, and I found folks who really love me for who I am. And that has been just totally life-changing. I got top surgery in 2019. I'm going to be celebrating 2 years this December, and like, that's wild, because I used a binder for like 7 years or something. I did not think that I would get to where I am. And now, since I actually left Texas to move to Washington to get my degree, to change my gender marker to X, which is a thing that's in Washington that's not in Texas. I am now able to give back to LGBTQ saves after I was supported and after my education was put first. And now I get to see that being a queer and trans adult is so, so important in the lives of queer youth who were where I was, who were stuck or who just didn't have queer and trans adults to turn to. And this group really provides that. This group provides that family and those role models. So that's been some of my journey. And I'm so grateful to be here. And one day I'm going to be a queer ecologist. I'm excited about that. Thanks, y'all.
So like I said, it's only been a few years that I realized that, that gender didn't have to be one or the other, and that mine is a lot more fluid than I originally thought it was. I remember being in high school and just not wanting to perform to the standards of being a woman that society wants us to perform at. It was a lot of pressure. I was, constantly fighting against that a lot of the time, and, dressing in ways that were more masculine, and finally cutting my hair really short senior year, which my mom was not too happy about. But yeah, it's been really great. I finally really came out on Facebook about 2 years ago, and then came out to my parents last year, right before the lockdown happened. I got to have conversations with them and let them know, that I'm gender fluid, I'm changing my name, please use my new name. And they were really great about it. It was really wonderful to have those conversations with them. And, my mom was really nice and said that she's glad that I just feel so comfortable with myself and that I feel happier as a person and everything. So, yeah, it's been great since, accepting and realizing all of this.
Thank you. So we had a trans tip, or maybe just a hair growth tip in general, show up in the comments section. So lovely Andrew, a good trick for faster beard growth is to brush the hairs in the direction you want it to grow multiple times a day. It stimulates the hair follicles. You got this. Well, thank you. Now I feel encouraged to brush it more and love on it more. And then our own Felix, who started volunteering with us a few 2 months ago, he also suggests over-the-counter minoxidil might help with the hair growth. a lot of trans masculine people do use minoxidil on their facial hair. And so it does work well for a lot of people, but just as a reminder, it can be toxic to pets. So just make sure that you look into it before committing. Awesome. So next, I would, for our next portion, we're going to be talking a little bit about the legal name and gender marker change process here in Texas. And so I would love to introduce our special guest, Jessica Jones. She is a lawyer here in Texas, and she's going to just walk us through the process a little bit. Jessica, can you hear us? Uh-oh. Oh, okay. She's just muted for a second.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Mic
yes,
on.
we can hear you.
Mic feedback on.
Awesome.
Mic off. Mic feedback
I am
off.
Jessica Jones. I'm a trans attorney. I live in Dallas. This is my lovely assistant and partner, Esne, and she'll be helping me discuss everything tonight and mostly showing the documents that we'll be talking about. Primarily, what we'll talk about is getting one's name and gender marker changed in Texas. The process is a little bit different if you want to do just one. I'm happy to answer questions, and if you want to send me an email, that's fine too. But for right now, we're just going to talk about doing both. So basically, the first thing I want to emphasize is this can all be done electronically in Travis County. Travis County is obviously one of the more liberal counties in Texas, and it is primarily, it's really where you want to go. You can file electronically. Name and gender marker change are good there because there's no real, without getting into the weeds, there's no actual law that says, oh, you can change your gender marker. It's mostly something that judges have interpreted. So really only Dallas and Travis County will grant them, but Travis County has it streamlined and down to a science these days. So I highly recommend you file in Travis County. Anyone in the state of Texas, if you live in the state of Texas or were born in the state of Texas, you can file in Travis County. Doesn't matter if you live there or not. So we'll start with just the basic petition. This is the first page. Oops, a little bit closer. You'll fill that out. It's pretty basic. It's just asking for all your information. Mostly, the most annoying thing is you do have to fill it out with your dead name. That's how it's titled in the court system. But all of these records are sealed, so you really don't have to worry about anybody finding that. But basically, it's personal information: your current legal name or dead name, addresses, driver's license numbers, all of that. It's just basic information. These forms are available on Travis County Law Library website. It's just literally Google Travis County Law Library, and they have all of the forms there. It's actually a pretty good little form thing. It has all sorts of instructions and commonly asked questions. Most of the time, that'll answer a lot of your questions, but sometimes you have specific questions that can't be answered. We do have a Facebook group, and I'll see if I can get Birdie to send it out, dedicated to helping people file these and get everything changed. It's an intimidating process, but I want to reassure you that it's actually quite simple. I wouldn't say easy, but simple. As long as you follow the basic steps, then you can get it done. It really is that simple. So the first thing you'll need to do is get a doctor's letter. The doctor's letter, it says it has to be from a medical doctor. Now, as an attorney, I can't say that doesn't matter, but I will say that people have gotten it done with therapist letters before. So take that as you will. Basically, the doctor's letter needs to be identical to the one that you can use to change the gender on your passport. If you Google passport gender change, it'll bring up the website for it, and it has a sample letter there. On that note, the State Department requires a letter, and they do not allow at all court orders to change your name or name and gender. Sorry, excuse me. They do not allow court orders to change your gender. You have to have a letter. So if you wanted to have a document with your correct gender on it before you can actually do all of this filing stuff, you can actually send it in with an application for a new passport and get it done without having to go through the court process. But for purposes of this discussion, the most important thing is that the letter is the same format as they use for a passport gender change, excuse me. The second thing you'll need to do is get fingerprints. This is as simple as going to a fingerprinting place. Again, Google is your friend. You just want to Google fingerprint near me, and they will take your fingerprints, put it on the card. You need to get a physical card. A lot of places now will kind of default to electronic cards. You need the physical card because you'll either be scanning it in or sending it in via mail. Those are the two biggest hurdles. And that's about it for things you need. Now, granted, if you have committed a felony, if you are under certain restrictions, which I won't go into, but basically, if you're still on probation, or if you've been convicted of a sex offense, that is a little bit different. You'll have to send in all your correctional paperwork and all of that. But again, for the purposes of the discussion, not that big of a deal. So after you get those two things, you'll fill out this petition. And again, pretty basic. It also comes with the final order. So this is basically just a duplicate of the petition. You also need to fill that out because basically you're petitioning the court and the responsibility is on you to make sure all that information is accurate. So basically when the judge sees it, he can just sign off on it rather than having to copy everything over. It's very common practice in the legal world, but I understand that the legal world does not have a lot of common sense sometimes. So it does cost $297 to file. However, the Travis County clerk, who is in the Facebook group, she is the one who actually reviews all of these. Let me back up a little bit. You can file a fee waiver. Fee waiver is shorthand. What it's actually called is a statement of inability to pay costs. And so it's basically just asking for financial information. The clerk of Travis County makes it a habit of just rubber stamping these. So unless you're Jeff Bezos or a millionaire, it will be approved. They always approve them. You can file that concurrently with your petition. And again, instructions are on the actual petition that tell you where to go to file and how to do so. We also have a several extensive guides in our Facebook group. But again, the actual nitty-gritty of filing it is not that difficult. You just have to scan in everything. Pretty much any smartphone is a scanner. I know with the iPhone, there's a scanning app hidden in the camera app, I think. And on Android, I know there's plenty of apps. So you can just take pictures of it and send it in. After you submit it, get everything done, you'll get a confirmation. Then the shitty part starts, because you got to wait. And I want to emphasize this. It will be approved if you have all of the information that it says, if you have the fingerprints, if you have the doctor's letter, if you filled out everything accurately, you have everything that you need, the judge will approve it. If for some reason you forgot to dot an I across a T or didn't include something, it's okay. The judge or a clerk will call you or email you or contact you in some way so you can amend that petition and add it in. It will not be denied. The only reason it will ever be denied is if you are statutorily prohibited from changing your name, meaning you're a convicted sex felon. That's about it. In which case, I mean, it says in the documents that you can't change your name. So sometimes it takes 3 days, sometimes it takes 8 weeks. It really is just luck of the draw. I try to emphasize to everyone who files that when somebody else got their order is not representative of when you will get your order. I don't know how the tubes and stuff work on the internet in Travis County, but sometimes people file and get it back immediately and you're good. Sometimes it takes forever. So just understand that if there is a problem, they will contact you. However, if you don't hear anything back in 2 months or so, then sure, give them a call. Sometimes things do slip through the cracks. My point is, it will not be rejected for really any reason. Even if it were rejected, you can just file again. This is not you have one shot, you better get it right, otherwise you're screwed. That's not how it works. And then you'll get the copy of you'll get an email saying that the order has been granted, and do you want to order certified copies? The answer is yes, and they do need to be certified copies. I'd recommend getting 4 or 5. Some places like to keep them whenever you present it. Some places will copy and give it back. It just kind of depends. But having 4 or 5, I think they're $4 each. And just having them available in case you need to use one is always convenient. And that's after you get that done, you have your order. The order is not universal. It is not self-executing. You have to use that order to go somewhere, to the bank, to the Social Security Administration, to the driver's license office, whatever. And they will take that and use it to change your information. But it is, again, I changed my name and gender marker 4 years and 10 days ago. And still, to this day, I will get junk mail addressed to my dead name. Because, again, I don't care about updating random-ass junk mailers about my name. It's annoying, but it does happen. There's no universal announcement that says this person has changed their name. Some of you might live or be from other states where publication is required, meaning you have to publish a notice that you will change your name. In Texas, that's not required. There is no requirement to publish it. It can all be done privately, confidentially. It's not something that you have to worry about publicizing if you don't want to. I think that's really the most, let me check my notes, but the fee waiver I mentioned earlier is on the Travis County website. It's called the Statement of Inability to Pay Costs, because why call it something simple? Anyway, I think that's about it in terms of a general overview. If you have any questions or comments or anything, I'm happy to answer. Obviously, everybody is different, but the most important things to remember are, first of all, that this is nowhere near as intimidating as it seems. I'm an attorney. I did mine 4 years ago, and I was still panicked, even though I knew the process, even though I knew it was going to happen. So I don't blame you. You're gonna have those feelings, and you're probably going to worry about it. Totally understandable. But the form does lay out the steps pretty clearly, and seeing it broken down into single discrete steps, I know for me, just relieved my anxiety. Just being able to see, okay, got this, check. Got this, check. The other thing is, what was I going to say? Clearly very important. Anyway, don't panic. Don't worry about it. It can be done, and it will be done. If you have any, oh, that's right. The other thing. This is something I tell to a lot of people when they have questions, and all of us are very special, but you're not that special. Meaning, if you think, oh, I got arrested for a Class A misdemeanor, I can never get it done. I've been arrested for a Class A misdemeanor and I got it done. Plenty of things like that. I was born in another country, doesn't matter. I was born in another state, doesn't matter. I don't have a driver's license, doesn't matter. A lot of things that you think might preclude you from doing it, do not. In my 4 years of helping people do this, both in court and online and everything, there's been one person who we could not get it done at that time because their probation was not yet over. So it's really not, it's very rare that you will be the person who cannot have it done. Like I said, only one person, and it had to be delayed. So anyway, I think that's about it for real this time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Hi, Jess.
I will, Birdie can provide information. Birdie can provide information and my contact information. Feel free to contact me, and we can, I can see what I can do to help you.
We actually did have a few questions that
Sure.
from some of our youth. I've kind of dubbed myself the name change fairy for the program because I've gone through this process and helped at least one of them so far. So how does the process differ if you're a minor?
So the minor process is different in terms of what you have to get, but the evidence basically. So the doctor's letter is the same. That is what we call expert evidence. The judge is not actually making a decision. Are you trans enough? That's not something that they do. The letter that you get is the expert evidence from a medical doctor saying this person is trans enough. And due to complicated legal rules I won't explain, since there's nobody opposing the name and gender change, that's going to be accepted and the judge will grant it. In terms of minors, one thing that is complicated is if you have divorced parents, because you do have to get spousal permission. And if you don't have spousal permission or you can't find it or can't secure it, then you do have to end up filing a separate suit in order to compel the person to show up to either approve or disapprove. I have not delved into a lot of minor cases, but I know that the primary consideration is just whether both the parents agree, or if they don't, or if they're separated. You have to make sure to include a copy of the parental agreement that came in the divorce, things like that. The actual process itself is pretty straightforward, and actually, weirdly, you don't need fingerprints if you're a minor. I don't know why, but the fingerprint requirement is actually only for the name change. If you're just getting your gender changed, you don't need fingerprints at all. And the only reason they require fingerprints is because it's literally in the Texas name change statute. So basically, if you're a minor, parents is the main issue, and divorce will complicate things. And if it comes to that, I would strongly recommend hiring an attorney. Christine Anderson is in Austin, and she specializes in family law and this kind of work. I'm happy to give her name and number to anybody who needs it. But once it gets into that, that is where the self-help really kind of has to come to an end.
Okay. And so you would need both parents then to agree to it?
Correct. And sometimes, there's a deadbeat dad or, a forgotten mother and you can't locate them. Basically, at that point, you have to file a process server and say, okay, here's the last known address. And you have to try to serve them several times. And if they don't get served, then that's it. It's a default and it doesn't matter anymore. So it's a process, but it's not a barrier.
Okay. And do you have an idea of what the average overall cost for not just the name change through the state, but like getting your driver's license or state ID, all of those things updated?
So it depends because when I got my license changed, mine was just about to expire. So I had to pay to get a new license and not just to renew it. If you're just like, say you have a year-old license, then it's cheaper to do that. When it comes to the passport, if I remember correctly, it's about $100 to apply for a new passport. And a note on that, you do have to apply for a new passport. Even if you have an existing passport, you're not updating your passport, you're applying for a fully new passport. With Social Security, I want to say it's 20 or 30 bucks. It's most of the stuff is gonna be 20, 30-ish, unless it's passport agency. The birth certificate varies. If you're getting your birth certificate changed, I highly recommend you do it expedited, because right now the backlog is, at least last time I heard, it's about 6 to 8 months. Now, granted, right? It's not something that is, and birth certificates are good to have, but like, it's not a common document. But if you need it quicker than that, you'd have to pay for expedited. So I actually just helped a woman in China, born in Texas, now lives in China. And obviously she can't she cannot file from there, and they won't accept any money. The court won't accept any money from over there. So I've been serving as her agent here. And I want to say that it was $87 total to get a new birth certificate, and an actual, like the fee to change it, and the expediting fee, and the shipping fee, and a new birth certificate fee. What you want to do on the birth certificate, and this is something that gets into the weeds, and it's actually a much better form now, but you will get a new birth certificate. If you just say edit or amend an existing birth certificate, they'll literally just like change it on a separate form and then staple it to the actual birth certificate. The getting a new birth certificate actually removes the old information and prints out a new birth certificate and changes the information in the archive instead of an actual amendment. So banks and most other places don't charge anything. But for the most part, if you're an adult, especially if you're AFAB and you've been married before, it'll be very similar to changing your name after marriage. Mostly it's just kind of a pain. Thankfully, now that things seem to be looking up for COVID, hopefully it won't be as much of a pain. And when you get your driver's license, please go to the Texas DPS website and use Get in Line online, because you can register for a certain time and it'll text you updates, and then you can sit at home working or eating ice cream in your underwear until you actually have to go. So it's a lot better than sitting in a DPS office. So I know that changing titles on cars is a thing. It's not expensive. Again, I want to say it's $20 to $30. I never had to change the title on my car. Funny story, I totaled my car the day after I got my gender marker changed. So at least that was one thing that was easy. But yeah, it just kind of varies. I mean, I would say under $200, excluding the passport, for sure. Including the passport, $250, it's hard to say, because again, everybody's situation differs, but a good number to have is, 200. Have that on the back burner. And the birth certificate is the most expensive one. It's also the one that is kind of least necessary, unless I know there are certain professions that require birth certificates, but I have literally never used my birth certificate in the last 4 years since I've had it. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then if you're paying for the name change gender marker, when is the fee for that due?
So it's due when you file. And again, this is another reason why I highly recommend Travis County, is because they grant these as a matter of course. Again, the fee waiver, statement of inability to pay, you will file this concurrently with the, at the same time as the other documents. And there is a guide that we have on our Facebook group that says exactly literally somebody wrote down, screenshotted every single one where you need to go to make it as easy as possible. If you are paying, one, stop, print out this statement of inability to pay costs and file it. Because worst case scenario, if you get rejected somehow, or if Danica leaves the Travis County Clerk's office and now they don't get automatically approved, then you'll pay. But otherwise, the way you e-file, you don't have to actually pay, if I remember correctly. I filed in Dallas in person and had to go through all the rigmarole before Travis County streamlined it. So I don't have personal experience with that. But from what I hear, as long as you look at the instructions, it's pretty straightforward. So
yeah, those instructions in the Facebook group are great. I use it twice now and very helpful.
Yeah, one of the members made it, and it's incredibly helpful.
And then just one other thing, whenever we're looking at things that could be challenging, do you think that like finding a doctor that's affirming is kind of one of the main difficulties?
So, it is, but it's not a separate difficulty. It can be a difficulty to start the process, but once you find a doctor who is willing to start you on hormones, or whatever medical transitioning treatments, therapies you deem appropriate, that's the biggest hurdle. If you live in a large city, then chances are there's at least a handful of doctors. I know in Dallas that the Pride Center, the resource center, has every month, I think, they may have changed it because of COVID, but where you can go and they have doctors who volunteer and can prescribe hormones or can write letters if for some reason your doctor retired and you can't find or something like that. So, and again, some people choose not to do hormonal therapy, which is a completely valid way to go. It's a little bit more difficult to have a doctor who's not providing that do that. But when those specific circumstances, again, I can't recommend it, but a therapist letter has been accepted in certain situations. So
awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's the end of the questions that we had. So
awesome. And again, thank you for having me on. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or the organizers here, and they can definitely put you in touch with me. You can search for our Facebook group. It's just Texas name and gender marker change, and it should pop up. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
That was so sweet. Sorry. Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on and letting us know about the name change process and being so thorough about the process. I know a lot of us have gotten a little bit caught up in what all is needed to get done. But yeah, and thank you guys for showing some love on screen. It's adorable. All right, so Shalia and I will come on next. So we're going to be talking about, just very briefly, about some other challenges in Texas, some of them legal, some of them that we faced in our own time. So just to kind of go to the slide, This is talking about the 2017 legislative session. So various members of the Texas legislature in 2017 attempted to introduce a number of bills that would prohibit transgender people from using bathrooms that aligned with their gender identity in schools and other public buildings. These bills also attempted to establish that local governments and schools couldn't prohibit discrimination against trans people in the bathroom or in sports. And if Senate Bill 23 had passed, local governments couldn't implement non-discrimination laws for trans people or other groups that weren't protected under federal law. So there's some of the difficulties that the trans community does face does come from social expectations and the culture that we've grown up in. However, there's also a lot of legal hurdles as well. I'm going to pass the mic to Shalia, who's going to be talking a little bit about what we're facing right now in the 2021 legislative session and here in Texas.
So, our friends in the GOP are always finding creative ways to alienate the LGBT community with legislation. So, some of the recent things they cooked up are dealing with gender affirming healthcare and youth participation in sports. So Senate Bill 29, Senate Bill 373, and House Bill 1458, all of them aim to ban trans children from participating in interscholastic, words are hard, athletics, unless they participate as their biological sex, which we know is not an option because they are transgender. So, and it's actually based on the misconception that trans girls have a competitive advantage in sports, but contrary to popular belief, there's no evidence that supports that. All it does is serve to alienate and isolate a group that's already being discriminated against. At the end of the day, all kids deserve the chance to play, period. I don't know what needs to go on for that to happen, but all kids deserve a chance to play. It gives them that social interaction. It helps them with teamwork. Sports are just good for anyone all around. We also have House Bill 68 and House Bill 1399. So these both deny gender affirming healthcare for Texas children under the age of 18. So it actually changes the definition of child abuse to something that is blatantly transphobic. So if this legislation gets passed, a medical or mental health professional could be legally charged with child abuse if they try to change or affirm a child's perception of their gender, even if it's, not even if it's inconsistent with their biological sex. So basically, they're trying to make it impossible for trans kids in Texas to receive gender affirming and life-saving healthcare. How is it life-saving, you might ask? I'm glad you asked. So 51% of transgender males and 30% of transgender females have attempted suicide at least once. That's 81% of transgender youth from the age of 11 to 19. So the healthcare and the support that these children are receiving or that these children need could possibly serve to save their lives and help them become I forgot what I was going to say, but help them grow and become who they want to be. So at the end of the day, these bills are pro-discrimination, pro-hate, and pro-division. So with that being said, be sure you contact your local representatives regarding these bills and this legislation. And if you're over 18 or 18, please vote against anti-LGBT legislation because it matters.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Shalia. So that's just a little bit of the icebreaker, tip of the iceberg is what I meant to say, of what is being faced here in Texas. However, we do want to focus more on the positive things today. It's Transgender Day of Visibility. We want to be visible. We want to be happy. So we won't dwell too long on that. I would love to pass it off to Jay for another ally tip.
Ally tip: don't ask what's in my pants. If you're not my doctor or my romantic partner, it doesn't concern you, and not everyone has something to get off their chest.
Hi, I'm Celeste. I'm trans. It's been a long, really tumultuous, but also really fun journey to kind of get to the point that I am in my life. A lot of people along the way that kind of pushed me one way or the other, and helping me figure out who I am. Usually I spend weekends doing performances of Rocky Horror Picture Show pre-pandemic, and I think that definitely helped out a lot. There was a couple of things that when I was younger I used to a lot of women's clothing that I used to wear when I was like a teenager, that I would get a lot of flack for, but I think I felt really good in those sort of things. And later on, as we kind of went forward, I used to play around with a lot of pronouns. It wasn't something that I really paid attention to, until somebody started just consistently using she, her pronouns for me. And at that point, I think it really clicked.
Mic feedback on. Mic off.
Hormones only about a year and 3 months, and it's been, I think, really validating. When I was younger, I used to deal with a lot of eating issues. I just wouldn't eat for long periods of time because I just had body issues. And I used to think that was like dysmorphia, like I just didn't like the shape of my body. But it wasn't until much later, once again, like I said, I do Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is done in a lot of makeup. It's done in a lot of women's clothing and stockings and underwear and stuff. That sort of look on me while somebody was using she, her pronouns for me made it click. And from there, I think I kind of put it all together. So it's been really nice, getting things like skirts and dresses and dressing up fancy for events, because it's very validating. What I thought was like just regular issues with my body turned out to be something a little bit maybe more apparent to others than it was to me. But being on hormones even now, you kind of see this, and I look at myself and I don't have those kind of issues looking at my own body anymore. And it's really validating to me, to be called ma'am, Mrs. and stuff like that. It's all really nice, and especially like when I was a teenager, I wasn't allowed to grow out my hair, but now it's just as long as I really want it. And so I think I look very nice. I wake up and I don't have those kinds of issues for me. People along the way have been supportive of me and my transition and my journey. People that aren't have been pretty easily replaced to fill that same role that they used to fill in my life. And it's been nice. I cook a lot with people. Pre-pandemic, I used to cook a lot with people and have people over. I met a lot of people through doing Rocky Horror Picture Show. I went to movies every single weekend. There was always a midnight movie playing somewhere that I always went to go see, and I connected with a lot of people that way. So I don't think anybody ever thought much of it when I came out, and I think that's important, because while it is a big it's a big realization to have. You're still you. You're a more true you than you were before coming out. And I think that's important to have, for not only for other people, but definitely for your own sake.
who are still questioning, we just want to remind you that your journey is yours. So you don't have to take any steps you want. You don't have to take any steps you don't want to, and there are no timelines. So I know we were talking a little bit earlier about stuff that was going on with us. I'd love to allow Jessica the chance to share her story and just kind of converse more as a group about our journeys.
Sure. For me, it was about, to launch into the abbreviated version, like a lot of us, I knew that there was something different when I was growing up, but didn't really have a word for it. For context, I just turned 34, so definitely was not a thing growing up. And like a lot of people, I compensated by going aggressively in the other direction to convince everyone that I'm as masculine as possible, which worked for the most part, for convincing everyone else at least, not myself. And that's one thing that I learned early on, because I was fortunate to have the help of lovely Claire Bow, who lives in Austin. She is like the trans attorney godmother. She was good friends with a law school friend of mine, and she helped me go through it and constantly reminded me that everybody's journey is different. And one piece of advice that I found helpful is that the transitioning is more accurate than transitioned. Your transition is a journey that never really stops. It's a process of self-understanding, a process of realizing who you are and doing what you feel you need to do to make yourself that person that you want to be and that you feel that you are. If you're MTF, trans woman, you don't have to get surgeries. You don't have to go on hormones. Same with trans masks. It's not a thing that is required. You are no less valid just because you don't get top surgery. I'm no less valid because I don't really have a desire to get bottom surgery. I realize this is veering into the don't ask what's in my pants category, but in this context, I think it's important. Everybody has body issues, and it's especially true with trans people. And there's always a temptation. I fall victim to it. Very much follow a lot of trans Twitter. And I see people, especially girls, who have transitioned before they hit male puberty. And you just have this, I'm so happy for you, but also that pang of jealousy that you wish you had done that earlier. But the thing is, you didn't. But you are where you are now. And you can only control your future. You can't look back and say, oh, I should have done it earlier, or oh, this wouldn't have happened, or oh, that might have happened. Yeah, that might be true, but it's also all bullshit. There ain't nothing you can do about it. The best way to do it is be the best person you can going forward in your transition and just generally speaking. There's no step-by-step guide, unlike actually legally changing a name and gender marker. I had to work in boy mode for a year because my employer, who was also my dad, was not super accepting. Things have gotten better, especially once I left working there. But, people have different paths. No one is more or less valid because they took 2 years to come out of the closet or, realized it immediately. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, you finally came out. Yeah, we kind of suspected. So either one is fine. There is no universal measurement. There's no measuring stick. The person who determines your level of transness is you. However you define it, that's what being transgender means.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is so important to know that there isn't a timeline, that there's nothing you have to do in 6 months. I know when I started kind of coming out and figuring out who I was, I immediately took the masculine label, and in a month I was like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta be a real man. And to me, that ended up being too fast. Because like at first I was happy, I was like, okay, I'm expressing myself this way. And I had kind of blinded myself to the fact that I needed to take it a little bit slower because it was such a sudden change. Because like sometimes I do think like, oh, I wish I had started testosterone earlier. I would have been able to do this. I would have been able to do that. Or, you know, just like I have it in my head, all these things I could have done better if I'd already started medically transitioning. But now that I'm looking at myself and knowing how I was when I was younger, I really do, like, for me, it was perfect that I waited until I was in like a better spot to really realize who I was and kind of go through this process with a clearer mind and not I'm trans, so I have to be on testosterone. I was able to really like figure out what hormones meant to me in that sense. Let's see, would anyone like to share any lingering thoughts on their journey or anything like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I know, like I've said, you know, I'm older, and like Jessica said, when I had no idea that gender fluid or non-binary was a thing when I was younger. Those terms were not well known. I managed to find a YA novel that was about a transgender person, and that was the first time I ever heard about anybody not being what they were assigned at birth. So that was a whole new thing, but I still thought the binary existed, and that was my only option. So I was kind of like, well, I guess I'm just a tomboy. It's fine, whatever. But you know, when I kind of quietly came out on Facebook about 4 years ago, quietly. I made a status that was something like, it's already hard enough trying to explain to people what pansexual is. I can't imagine what it would be like to explain what gender fluid is on top of that. And I don't think anybody really realized what I was saying, which is fine, because at that time I wasn't quite ready for it. And then a few years later, I kind of like, in a moment of anxiety and like, I don't want people to misunderstand who I am, I was like, hey, I'm gender fluid. This is what this means. I'm not changing my name or my pronouns. Hi, thanks, bye. And then, you know, probably about a year after that or so, I was like, I think I want to start going by Jay, because that's a part of my name that I really like. And then I was like, I'm going to use all the pronouns. He, him, they, them, she, her. Cool, let's go with it. And then as I'm just, you know, getting more into myself, I guess, I was like, I don't really like she, her. I've never liked being called ma'am. Never once in my life. It just never felt right. And I have a little button that I like to wear to try and combat that. It seems to really just let other queer people know that I'm queer, more than letting straight people know not to call me ma'am. But like, it's also cool to like randomly meet queer people out in public. So, but yeah, it just, you know, I finally was kind of like, oh, I really only want they, them, and then discovered that neo pronouns were a thing, and I was like, mers. I've always been a mer person. I need these. So, yeah, it's been really great. Being with LGBTQ saves has kind of also, you know, watching these kids and everything and having support from the other program leaders and volunteers has been really great. Recently, a few years ago, I discovered that sometimes chin hairs will grow in, and I was like, no, I must always pluck them. So I recently did an experiment and kind of just let them grow out, and ones on this side got really nice and long and soft, and I liked them a little bit, and there's just like a couple, but then the ones on this side stayed kind of short, and they were spiky, and I didn't like the way they felt. So one day they just all got plucked out again, but it was nice to kind of experiment and be like, what would I like? What would be cool? So it's a journey. Every day I'm discovering something new, or, you know, feeling something different, and that's okay. I like to think that my gender has seasons. Most of the time I feel fairly right in the center of the spectrum, but some days I'm more feminine, sometimes I'm more masculine, and all of that is great and just part of who I am.
Oh, gee. your little chin hair thing makes me think of like my facial hair, because one side grows in more fully than the other side, and I'm just like, why? All right, y'all. So we are kind of nearing the end of our stream, and I just wanted to take a moment just to reflect on the things that we've learned throughout our time. I just want to give a shout out to our lovely community members who submitted a video talking about their gender euphoria. It was amazing to hear everyone's story. Thank you again to all of our awesome people who are on the stream, Jessica, Jay, Issa, and Shalia. It's been amazing to hear the different experiences that we've all had. And I was wondering if maybe we could each share a favorite moment from the stream. I know, Jessica, you weren't here the whole time, but maybe a favorite time of yours. But I think what I really enjoyed tonight, like I think we said it in the chat on YouTube, but Shalia is one of our newer volunteers. He's up and coming as a program leader. I'm very excited about that. But I just loved hearing him speak his truth. I think that fills me with like the most joy ever. So that was my favorite moment of tonight.
So my favorite moment of tonight was really everything, just watching all of you guys, educate and, us coming together and doing this in spite of, some people who didn't want it to happen, certain things going on, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm super excited that we did this, and I couldn't have done it with a better group of people.
Personally, for me, I think my favorite specific moment was when Jay referred to their gender as seasonal, which definitely spoke to me at certain times. But overall, I'm just kind of in awe at how all of us came together and that we were able to do this and really make a significant difference, hopefully with the legal stuff, or just inspiring people to just be themselves, to live their truths.
I was just really excited to be a part of this. This night has been really wonderful, especially just being so new to the trans community and everything, and to Saves. It was really great to be here. Jessica, learning that I need to just get a whole new passport and not get a renewed one or a lost one or whatever was great to hear, because I need to get a passport. And I had one previously, so thank you for that information.
Oh, you're gonna end up using that to leave us earlier. So, boo. Just joking. Issa, did you want to share?
Yeah, for me, I absolutely loved the Alice and Lynn video. It just fills me with so much love. And I learned that the cat in the background of that video is Cornbread. And they have another cat named Beans. I'm like, I love queer people so much. And just seeing like a loving and healthy relationship that allows for room for trans folks to grow as trans folks. And yeah, all of the love here, just in this room, I love that. And that fills me with so much life. So I've absolutely loved being a part of this and getting to talk with other queer and trans folks about how wonderful it is to be us. So this has been such a gift.
So I did want to give one last plug for LGBTQ Saves. Again, we are a group focused on LGBTQ youth ages 12 to 24 in Fort Worth. However, due to COVID and the great pandemic of 2020 and 2021, we are entirely virtual right now. So we have virtual Zoom meetings every Thursday. We have a thriving Discord community filled with lovely people who are just uplifting each other. We play D&D, we play Minecraft, we do all these awesome things that regular people do. So, queer people are just awesome in better ways. But tonight has been awesome, getting to educate people about the trans community. If you loved our educational work, please consider donating to LGBTQ Saves. This stream is raising money for our shapewear program. That way we can provide trans-affirming shapewear to our youth that are in our programs. Like I said earlier, we do serve a majority of the youth we serve are transgender or gender questioning, and we would love to help them on their journey as well. We do have one last video, and that is one of our youths. She wrote a poem and she wanted to perform it for us. So we're gonna let Elliot take it away. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for speaking out against some of the hate in the comments. We really appreciate our community rallying against us on our Trans Day of Visibility. Again, thank you, and I hope you have an awesome night.
Thanks, guys.
My hips may not be as wide as I'd like. My chest is too flat, and my pants are too tight. My voice is much deeper than I'd like to hear, but still I am proud of making it here. I like my trans body. I like it, it's true. I love my trans body, and I love you too. I will make this vessel a home for myself.
If everyone could just
loving on every shelf. I love my trans body. My body is mine. I like my trans body. My trans body is fine.